Very good. What kind of questions tonight? Anybody have anything in particular? I just wanted to kind of get on here. It's a great week. We're finally home this week and trying to get a few things caught up around the house. Got several family coming in from up in the New England area. They're coming in tomorrow, and we've got several get-togethers over the weekend. But looking forward to some great family time. Next week, kind of around here also, and then I guess the 4th, we head up to Gwinnett County, north of Atlanta. So that's the next training that we have. So hopefully next week is not too rainy. I got a lot of stuff to get done, but it's turning a little chilly down here. Over the weekend, it's supposed to be up in the 70s. So kind of a warm time. So we got average feller. Where are you from? Barry. So everybody got all the saws ready to go. Minnesota. I was reading it's kind of warm up that way this year for this season. Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Salisbury, Maryland. All places we've been. I guess there's a cold snap going up through there right now. Jambo Man checking in. Tree Works Unlimited. So, but several things I put up. Hope everybody has seen them this week. One on a little story on the rock. Posted it up yesterday. A story I've been telling for several years. Hopefully everybody gets to listen to that. I'm working on a technical piece that's going to be looking at troubleshooting saw chain, and that's years ago I was told that you could learn quite a lot from below the rivets of how the teeth were shaped and cutting, and so I've got some things I'm putting together there, and Jambo Man's going to be helping me. He's got some worn out chains, so hope to be getting those next week, get some pictures together. But the deal is, looking at wear patterns on the bottom of the tie straps and cutters and drive links to be able to see the sharpening as well as depth gauge settings, those kinds of things, and how it wears for the wood, and also how different types of material affect that. So it's going to be hopefully kind of interesting. I put one together years and years ago. We had it in chain manual for steel, and then Oregon's got one that they worked on, and it's still on their site. But I hope to put together a little video snip and take a look at how the wear affects everything on the cutting process too. Also, Sprocket Wear. I've been running into in trainings here over the past 2-3 months. A lot of Sprocket Wear that people are not really paying attention to, causing damage to the drive links and also to the tie straps on the notch areas. So it's something where had one that I guess the shop, he went and he got a new bar and chain, put that on, and they didn't replace the sprocket. Ended up with, he made one cut and the chain derailed, and it dropped down into the slot. Had a spur type sprocket on it, dropped down into the slot, and the chain was so loose it just rolled right off the bar. So important to make sure you check those sprockets. Neat session out in the West a few years ago. They were showing me how a lot of the floating rim sprockets are made, and it's I guess you'd call it centered metal. And they take and heat it, melt it down, put it into molds, and then they heat treat just the outer 28 thousandths of an inch, from what I understand, of the surface. They can't harden it all the way to the middle because it gets too brittle like glass. So they just harden the outside surfaces, and when that wear gets down through about 28 thousandths of an inch, now you're into soft metal that wears very quickly. So sprocket maintenance is something that needs to really be watched. This past week I ran across another situation where bar and chain combinations, I think it was on a 261, I believe, steel. They just picked up a bar and chain, but they picked up a 3/8 pitch 50 gauge bar and chain, but it had a 325 pitch sprocket on it. So got to make sure all that matches up. So we'll talk about some of that, how that affects, because it seems to be a lot of those running out there. So got to make sure that everything matches up. What's we picked up here? Any questions, any direction you'd like to talk about tonight? Just to answer any questions, trying to get these things set up. I've got camera equipment I've been kind of playing with, and audio, trying to get it kind of improved for the videos, and so this is only about the second real live session that I did, so I want to make sure that it's looking good and working good. But anything you'd like to chat about, we can bring that up and take a look. I did have one question on the HEXA file, kind of a firewood logging business, small, over in Alabama, and very interested in the HEXA chain and files. He sent me a message and wanted to know the measurements, and I really hadn't measured across the flats, which is kind of the guiding surface of this file, and I measured across it today. Looks like it's 7/32 of an inch. Now I've had some questions about lower profiles, like 325 pitch. Would it match up? And I tried it on. I've got low profile 325, and once the chain's wore back, it'll go between the raker and the point, but it doesn't match up. But full profile 325, larger teeth, and the full chisel, square side, square top, would be possible with this one. I haven't really heard whether they're going to make a smaller version, 3/16 or 9/32, whatever, or 9/64, excuse me. I assume that they probably will. But it looks like everything, according to my sources, has kind of been delayed a little bit. It's looking like it's going to be about March before anything gets really in the States on this. And right now, from what I understand, it's just full profile 3/8 33 RS series tooth with it's going to be a 63 gauge on the bar combinations right now. Let's see, average fellow, how familiar are you with the NWCG S212 chainsaw safety? Any opinions, pro or con, to game of logging? Well, the Forest Service, whether it be federal or state, the S212 is basically built up for fire workers, and the chainsaw portion of it has been adapted a little bit more here over the past couple of years. I've had the opportunity to work with the Forest Service on putting together some updates. I guess the first time we were working on it was 2015, and then it's been going through all of the different processes, and I think January of this year they finally got it out, kind of rolled out into the field. Pete Duncan, he's a national chainsaw specialist in charge of training for the Forest Service, and he put together a group of all the instructors. We got together and went down through some different things, adding open face technique, looking at how to really look closer at different lean positions, and then also looking at bore cut. And they've got that in now in the I guess it's the land management side of it, the NCDC, I think they call it. I can't remember on that one, but it'll eventually be rolled into the S212 also, I think. But it opens up the opportunity for people to go through our 5-step type of information taking to put together the plan. So that's really part of the basics of it. They're calling it a little bit different in the process, but the basics of it are the same. So that's something that's starting to get going. Not a whole lot of difference in techniques according to the area of the country. They're still, leaving Humboldt and standard notch, conventional, into the process. Started to look at the percentages of hinge dimensions and things like that, like we've used in the game of logging. But it's like we talk about in the training. It's not what you call it. It's understanding what the face notch does and what the hinge does. And the important thing is, in our training, we look at looking at hazards. First of all, you got to have a place that's wide enough and long enough to be able to place the tree. And then you look, is that spot, filled with any hazards for yourself or crew? Are there any obstacles that, whether it be a tree or whether it be a fence or power line or whatever it might be, in that case of taking that information to have a place to place the tree, the drop zone, or the Forest Service calls it the lay of the tree. And then taking a look at the leans, whether it be head lean, forward lean, back lean, side lean, and you really have to take that. I don't care how you do it. You can walk upright to the tree or you can back up from it. But when you start to look at a notch and hinge working, you really have to have two positions, and that be directly behind, looking at your target area, or in the target area, looking at side to side crown weight. And that's also looking at how wide that crown is to be able to fit between any obstacles. And then forward or back lean has to be at 90 degrees or parallel to your hinge, parallel to your face notch. And so that was the biggest thing we're trying to get through with the Forest Service. And like I say, all of that I think is pretty much in the writings now. I haven't really gotten, because it's hard for me to download it off the Forest Service site, but I did get preliminary materials to check from Pete, and everything looking pretty good on the S212s. Dan Blake, greetings. One of your subscriber giveaways of chaps. Chaps fit great videos. Very good. I hope those chaps are keeping you warm up there in Michigan, so I'm glad you liked them. And I had one other gentleman that I guess he was out of the country. I never did get a reply back from him that was on one of those giveaways. Hope to do another one here before too long. And Laura says, glad they're working for you too. She's not in here, but she's in there monitoring. So, but anyhow, did that answer your questions on the S212 or anything in particular? They're both good training systems. Game of logging is a little bit more production, a little bit more thought process. The S212 is regimented to be able to get people through it, and then work quick training for fire applications and all. And plus, the S212 is not only just chainsaw. You've got all of the windrows, brushwork, fire control. There's a whole lot of stuff that goes into that. And one thing I've really been pushing for, a lot of the S212 programs have been try to get it all through in 1 week, and then also do the testing for certification. So there's a process with a checklist. I do have those latest ones. More or less, you have to fell 3 trees, put together application training plans, and then you have to be able to fell 3 trees with a Class C faller instructor if you're going through the faller side of it. And so that's something that's carded by the U.S. Forest Service, and that's for Forest Service employees only. But there's a lot of areas to where some of the instructors are available for training to different organizations also. But most of the time, as far as game of logging, that's pretty much accepted, because anybody that goes through those days are pretty much going to be able to pass the S212 testing too. Let's see, Barry Swinger, thoughts on the new Aspen 2-cycle oil that is promoted, no smell, no smoke, environmentally friendly. Good, bad, or ugly? Barry, I haven't seen that. I saw one ad on it, but I haven't I haven't tried any or haven't seen any of that. Well, they help the West Coast folks, and it is okay for the saw. I imagine it looks like it's a synthetic blend, and so very, very similar to what you'd have with some of the synthetic blends from the major manufacturers. They're all blended differently, I'm sure, different components, but that seems to be lubricating very well, mixing very consistent, and works with a lot of different fuels. So I'd be interested in seeing how it works. But I pretty much for the past few years I've been using the canned products, so I use a lot of True Fuel, and so that's for me it's very consistent and stuff. But when you get into good 2-cycle oil mixes like that, and you're able to locate consistent fuel, consistent gasoline, it's going to work for you, I'm sure. But yeah, the low smoke and all, that's been around now for several years, and so that makes it a little bit easier to work around, and also a lot better for the environment, that's for sure. But I don't really have an answer for you on that. So, Average Phil, you did a GOL about 06 and started the fire service S212 in 08. Always curious what the pros think, as they seem to be a little East versus West Coast. Yeah, we've found the East Coast West Coast to be not an issue, but a little bit training differences, and that's something that Mr. Duncan was really working on. He's from the Oregon, Washington area, and plus he pretty much works training all of the West Coast and East Coast too. But but it's starting to change a little bit. The processes, PPE, everything is becoming a little bit more nationwide. So, but training programs are pushing a lot of the GOL formats, and so that's kind of standardized quite a lot of it, and you're seeing a lot more. I wouldn't say you see necessarily the open face as far as a more open conventional or notch, but you see a wider Humboldts in many cases on the West Coast, which that's an open face, and that's what I've really pushed now for several years. Is it's not what it's called, it's what it does. And so a 70-degree open notch gives you the movement, whether you want to call it a conventional or whether you want to call it a Humboldt. Definitely the Humboldt has some positives to it on the larger trees, and just from a lumber standpoint, but it also it really works well for with the Humboldt, the butts kind of slide off. Your notches don't have to be manhandled out, and so there's a lot of advantages with them, in the larger trees. But it's something to where it's the key there is it's the 70 degrees or more to allow the movement. And so I've got a couple things on the notches on some video, and then also on the website that kind of explain some of that. But very important we think about what it does, not what it's called in that case, because a lot of people are very, I guess you'd say, opinionated on what it's called, but it's how it works that's important. Average Fella, where were you located? Let's see, Minnesota. Yep. So who did you go through game of logging with up that way? 06. So anyway, back to the HEXA file. I think we're looking at hopefully before then, but it looks like from my sources it's going to be in March before anything gets over there. I'm already seeing a lot of posts from Europe, so it's starting to be marketed a little closer to home over there. But it's I think with shipping issues and And plus, I'm sure there's some legalities with the newer system, making sure coming to the United States that everything is going to be promoted and used correctly. So it takes a little bit more to get products in over here sometimes, time-wise. It has to go through a lot of legalese. Yeah, so if you're working with some of the fire programs, you kind of go coast to coast. University of Wisconsin, River Falls. Yeah, that I haven't been too much in touch with that up through there. We did Stevens Point, and a lot of guys came out of that. Tim Walsh and some of those guys, some of the earlier days. But I know, I guess Vista covered a lot of that area up through there, so I imagine it was one of those guys that you took with, probably. Definitely, University of Wisconsin was one of our collegiate programs back in the day. I believe it was 18 different colleges and schools that had harvesting programs at that time, and then it just seemed like all the harvesting programs kind of went away. So it kind of made it hard to get everybody up there. That was some fun times. I remember up there one time we were cutting. It was kind of winter quarter. Ended up there was about 3 or 4 feet of snow, and I thought I was digging around the trees, to get them down for the students and get it down closer to the roots. And ended up that next fall we were back up there again for another class or show. I guess it was up to Marquette. Went over there, and I looked out that same area that we had done the training, and the stumps were about 3 feet high, so I couldn't tell you how deep that snow was that time, and I know I dug down 2 or 3 feet at that point. Beautiful year round. I spent a good bit of time. Up around Hayward with the distributorship up through there, steel distributor. Did a lot of traveling around there. Worked and really helped organize some of the first Vista programs. So that was fun. They've had some good instructors up there over the years. Ken Lallemont and those guys. Tony Denninger. I guess one of the big things on this HEXA file, it's hard to really visualize, but it has these 2 flat sides. One of them has an indicator mark on it, and then the other is flat. And that flat rides down in the gullet of that sawtooth, and so it maintains the height as you start filing back. Even though the top of the tooth goes downward, it stays on the cutting surface, and it's a pretty unique design. Where with a round file, you've got to hold the right height from the gullet up to the chisel angle, and it's very hard to be able to maintain that height unless you really practice it. And that's the reason why I guess there's so many guides and stuff out. But once you file a little bit, you can be able to do it freehand. The guides help to hold it in that right position. Well, this really doesn't need the guide because it sits on that flat surface, and so it doesn't go up or down. You don't lift it off of that gullet area, and so it sets the angles properly as the tooth goes back, and then the cutting surfaces of the tooth just come down the 2 file surfaces. But like I said, it even matches up pretty decent. I haven't done a lot of cutting with it yet, but it matches up pretty decent to the large profile 325 pitch. But it doesn't work at all on the low profiles. But anyway, it's going to be something for later on in the new year. So looking pretty good. Quite a lot going on in this new year. We've got a lot of power companies, EMCs that we've been working with. They're getting more training for storm work, clean up stuff themselves. They're getting into A lot of areas now in the storms, they go back in to set up the lines, and they've got a lot of hangers and this kind of thing. I just had a very interesting program down with Baldwin Electric in Bay Minette, Alabama, a couple weeks ago, and we started. I've done several of those around the southeast so far, and one up in Ohio. We set up a temporary line, because a lot of what they have to do is either drop the line or either try to get the trees off of the line, and there's a lot of danger there. And so devised a program to use hinges and notches to be able to walk the weight of the tree off in small pieces. The line comes up and then rolls off, and it's absolutely amazing. It's a lot harder really to get a hung tree that's in another canopy or limb to come down, but I use the same techniques, but it's a lot harder to get it off of a tree than it is a power line. You'd think that would be backwards, but even between the leads and everything, it tends to roll right out. So, but that was I had one person looked at the video and said, it's I'd be careful with the power that they've done something. You never want to be around an energized line, and that was something that these guys have taught me. Anytime that you're out there, if you see a wire, you need to treat it as hot. And the magic word is, to think about, is it grounded on both sides if you were to assist in a situation. There's too many chances of back feeds now from solar projects, as well as from generators, people not setting up the switching properly. So very important to think through that. So it's kind of a neat thing to look at notches and hinges working in those hung tree situations. Average Feller, what did you think about the differences in the S212 and the GOL? What was your opinion on that? Did you find it to be usable in both directions? I think that's what I hear most of the time, is that I pick up a lot of stuff on the S212 and a lot on the planning process or the plans with the game of logging. Steering trees, any thoughts on using soft Dutchman or scissor wheel techniques? You'll have to explain the scissor wheel. I've probably heard something with a different terminology there. Soft Dutchman, I mean, there's really, to me, and I've cut a lot of different sizes and types of trees, but I really haven't seen any advantage of trying to twist or redirect. There are some cases where we would take and weaken a hinge on one side, but it would be very symmetrical. We would take face notch in, and then usually on a larger one bore the center of the face, and then have let's say if it were 15 inches of hinge across, it would be 3 inches on one side, and then a break with the heart, and then have 6 or 7 inches on the other side. And if there were a limb that were to hit or whatever in the fall, it would cause it to twist and roll out of it. But you still had the same steering. And so to think about a Dutchman trying to twist or lift, it's very unpredictable to me anyway, and from what my experience is with it. Somebody asked me the other day, how do you get the tree to jump away from the stump? And in the South we used to call it stump jumping, but you have a lot of times guys in the trees, tree service, they would be taking out sections of the top or limbs. They want the limb to fall out more horizontal and go away from the tree so it doesn't catch and flip and those kinds of things. And there are some different tricks that you can use for that, but it's really not very predictable at that point. So if you had something that you had to miss something or had to get it to fall in a certain position, rigging in that case is the only way to go. And trying to think about jumping a tree farther down the hill. You can be able to change angles on the notch a little bit, or do a less opening than 70 degrees. But what happens is that it also has a chance, if it hits anything else or it has back lean, you're trying to work with that you end up with it coming back towards you in some cases with butt rebound. So I don't know. I haven't seen too many times it's just a good notch that's open enough, leave a little bit less probably than a 10% hinge thickness, and be able to direct the tree where you want it to go, taking good lean informations. What was the sizz wheel that you're talking about? SIZWHEEL? Sizz wheel technique? Can't say I've ever heard that particular term. So I was going to say too, if any of you have any used wore out chains of whatever type or size, I'm looking for pictures. You don't have to send me the chains, but I'm looking for pictures. You can just shoot it with your phone or whatever of tie straps and teeth and drive links, showing some different wear patterns. So if you could just snap some pictures, and you can email them to info@forestapps.com. I need those to work with. Douglas Dent has sizz wheel in his book. It must be Baranek. I don't remember it being in Doug Dent's. A lot of folks miss him for sure on the West Coast trainings. He did a super job out there. Baranek had a lot of different techniques in his books. It's picked up in different parts of the West. Excellent books, by the way. Has a lot of different thought processes in there on the big trees. So there's a California technique, huh? I'll have to check. A friend of mine, David Perkins, out there does a lot of the work on some of the burn areas and stuff. He's up in around Vacaville, California. He's been probably not using the saw that much recently. He's been doing a lot with the Cinnabogin tree fallers. And they've got some huge equipment. They're out there working in some of the burn areas with it. So it's an advanced cut, especially on fir or some type of wood, makes a big difference from what I understand. Yeah, definitely. But I don't know what a sizz wheel would be there, huh? I guess the first thing to try to do, is Google it, huh? See if you had it spelled right. Well, it's on YouTube spelled that way, so I guess if it's on YouTube, it would be. There's 4 videos on it. Swinging Dutchman. Oh, okay, looks very similar. Yeah, that's is very similar to Soren Eriksson used to use half-controlled, which was basically you would put the notch in, take out about a quarter to a half of the leaning side of the hinge, and so you would taper it up, kind of taking a triangle out, and then start a cut from the back, and that would allow the tree to sit over and come back around. So you could take a kind of a cornered back leaner and bring it around pretty easy with that. Had the full control, we started using a wedge with it, and that would give you the stability to make sure that it didn't go backwards, but it would still, the wedge would just lift it, and then the weight would help to take it around. It could be pretty accurate, but I will say this, is that we ended up 94 because of the standards changed on the OSHA felling techniques or regulations. We kind of got away from it simply because when you start removing the hinge, there's chance that you're going to lose some control. Open front, it's not a real big deal, if you got a clear cut area or a large selection area. But if you get into getting into areas where you've got some thinning cuts or select cuts, then you end up with stuff touching, and you've got issues of safety at that point. So we kind of got away from that. But I know there are a lot of different things that people are using out there, and if you kind of plan it out properly, you take good information, that's one thing. But when a lot of people without that ability start doing that stuff, then you end up with some issues. And so that's the reason why we just kind of stay with the pretty much full hinge across. We take definitely center bore cuts out and heartwood out to cut down a lot of splitting and pulling. But when you've got the hinges wide enough apart, then you still got the stability there. To me, when I know Soren and I used to talk about it, that with half control, full control swings, you'd end up with say 3 trees out of 10 would not go exactly where you wanted them to go, but on a clear cut, it wasn't a real big deal. But when we started using a controlling hinge and really wedging, we found out 9 out of 10 for sure, and most of the time 10 out of 10 would go exactly where you wanted them to go with very little work. When you really start taking lean information, there's not a lot that you have to combat with it. I mean, basically, there's not a whole lot of trees that you can't take over with just a few licks on a wedge, and so it's or change directions. There are some issues, when you get around structures and different things, but it's amazing how wedging can work if you have the notch and the hinge set up correctly. All right, Average, thanks for dropping by, and we're fixing to get off here in a few minutes too. We've been going for several minutes here, I think. So, but appreciate you dropping by. Good talking with you, and I'll try to do another one of these before too long. But if you get anything on anything on the scissors wheel stuff, send it to me. Just info@forestapps.com, or leave it on the YouTube channel somewhere. Well, I don't see anything else new. Any other questions, anyone? I'm going to be working on that chain troubleshooting and try to get that done up here over the next week or so, and we'll have another live, and we'll do a lot of discussion on that, because we had a whole chain clinic that we did on that back years ago with steel, and I've had a lot of people come back and said they really found that information useful. They've got some information on the site still, but there's not any pictures or anything like we had. So the old manuals are defunct now, I guess you'd say. So we tried to get together something on video for it. But anyhow, I appreciate y'all dropping by tonight. We've had about almost 48-50 minutes, and so we'll kind of check out of here and try to see if we can build this thing up a little bit over the next couple months, and hope you find it interesting. And any questions you come across, you send them to me. I'll try to get something kind of planned out on it, or put together videos on it. And you can go back through. We've got quite a number of videos that are on the YouTube channel now, so a lot of it is following up on the different programs. If you hadn't gone back to some of the earlier ones, there's quite a lot of information there. So appreciate y'all a lot, and I do wish you a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday Season, and a great New Year's next week, and we may drop back by a little bit of a message next week, but appreciate y'all coming by, and if we can help with anything, just let us know. Good sawing, guys. See you later.